After repeating a year, I finally got into the university where my crush went. That's right, Liam Carter. My son, my obsession, my one-sided teenage fantasy. But now he's not just a fellow student, he's a senior, the tech genius of our Caltech robotics club, and a certified campus idol. The kind that makes girls trip over themselves in the hallway just to get a glimpse. I was just grateful to be breathing the same air as him. But fate has a messed up sense of humor. Because at the club's welcome party, I stood in front of him for the first time in what felt like forever and embarrassingly stuttered. Liam Carter, can I add you as a friend? He was drinking from a sleek glass, casually ignoring the chaos around him. And me. He didn't even look up. Just a cool, dismissive no, that was it. No drama. No lingering gaze. No soft music playing in the background. Just rejection. Cold, clean-cut, effortless rejection. Later, I stood in front of the mirror in our dorm, trying to fix my bun like it would fix my broken ego. Ellie, if you don't hurry, we'll miss the club's welcome party. Maddie, my roommate, called from outside. I forced a smile into the mirror and said, coming. Honestly, I had no reason to be there. I didn't make it into the robotics club. I was cut in the first round, obviously. People like me, the ones who just barely made it into Caltech, don't stand a chance in that level of competition. But Maddie? She's amazing. She's smart, confident, and somehow made it through all the rounds and became a member. She was the one who dragged me to this party, promising me it wouldn't be awkward. Don't worry, she winked. I heard Liam's gonna be there tonight. You won't be the only outsider, trust me. There'll be a whole flock of girls pretending to be interested in AI just to get near him. I laughed nervously. Okay, then Maddie paused and turned back to squint at me. Wait. Ellie. You're not going for Liam, are you? My ears turned red instantly. I didn't answer, but that was answer enough. No freaking way, she gasped. You? You like him? But he's literally the most arrogant guy on campus. I thought you were into the mature, low-key, coffee-sipping, poetry-reading type. I just smiled quietly. Maddie, I've had a crush on Liam for 4 years. 3 in high school, 1 during my repeat year. I worked my butt off just to get into the same university as him. Maddie blinked. Are you serious? I nodded. He was always number 1 in our grade. The guy teachers used as a benchmark. Loud, reckless, magnetic. I was the total opposite. Quiet. Average. Invisible. He sat behind me for 1 semester in high school. We barely spoke. I once handed back a test paper and he said, "Thanks, class rep," with that lazy smirk of his. My heart went crazy just from that. I still remember the day he casually handed me a yogurt and said, "Still growing, right? Take this extra one." Help me drink it, class rep. I knew it meant nothing. Just a random leftover snack. But I held on to it like it was a signed love letter. I wasn't delusional, I knew the gap between us. He was the moon and I wasn't even a star. Just some blade of grass on the ground hoping to feel the warmth of his light. Maddie was literally tearing up by the time I finished. Ellie, that's the most romantic and tragic thing I've ever heard. You're like the underdog heroine of a teen drama. I laughed and wiped her tears. Don't cry. It's just a crush. No, she sniffled. It's a whole movie. I'm helping you. Tonight, I'm going to make him add you. Which brings me to Naum, standing frozen outside the party room, gripping the door handle like it was a weapon. Maddie pushed me forward. Go in. You've got this. I staggered in, immediately spotting Liam Carter in the back corner. He was sitting with that lazy posture, all dark hair and sharper-than-reality cheekbones, nodding absently at whoever was talking to him. And of course, the girls. So many girls. All looking at him like he was the answer to every final exam they'd ever failed. Everyone came early, Maddie called out cheerfully, grabbing my hand. This is my roommate, Ellie Johnson. I wanted to die. My social anxiety spiked so hard I was tempted to turn and run, but I met his eyes for a brief moment. Or did I? His gaze landed on me unreadable. Then it drifted away like I wasn't even worth noting. I tugged Maddie's sleeve. He doesn't remember me. Nonsense, she yelled even louder. Isn't my roommate cute? She's single, and she's the best girl on campus. I felt like sinking into the floor. Some upperclassman even came over and handed me his phone to add him. In panic, I added a few of them. And that's when I felt Liam's eyes on me. His gaze wasn't amused or curious. It was dark. He looked annoyed. Why? Was he jealous? No, impossible. Not him. Still, I forced myself to walk up to him, holding out my phone with trembling hands. Liam Carter, we went to high school together. Can I add your contact? Everyone got quiet. Whispers started. She's got guts. Poor thing. Doesn't she know he hates this kind of stuff? He doesn't like good girls. He said so himself. Liam took a slow sip of his drink and didn't even look up. No thanks. The rejection hit me like a slap. I lowered my eyes, cheeks burning, and whispered only loud enough for him to hear, I can be naughty too. Liam stilled. His expression shifted just slightly. He stood up slowly and towered over me. Ellie Johnson, do you know what you're saying? His voice was rougher than usual, and his gaze pierced straight through me. I nodded. And for the first time, he looked genuinely shaken. A beat later, a round of teasing erupted around us, but Liam wasn't having it. He kicked the nearest guy's chair. Don't start drama in front of her. Everyone shut up. The room went dead silent. And before I could process anything else, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me out of the party room. He pulled me into the hallway and didn't say a word, just kept walking, fast and tense, his grip on my wrist surprisingly firm, like I'd disappear if he let go. The music and laughter from the party faded behind us, replaced by the quiet thud of our footsteps echoing down the corridor. My heart was hammering against my ribs so loud it almost drowned everything else out. Then, suddenly, he stopped in front of an empty classroom, pushed the door open, and practically dragged me inside. The moment it clicked shut behind us, Liam turned around and pressed me against the wall. I gasped. His hand came up, brushing a stray hair from my face, but his eyes weren't soft. They were burning, conflicted, unreadable. You were mute just now, he said, voice low and irritated. Someone teases you and you just bow your head and take it. But then you come up to me, act all bold, say you can be naughty? What are you playing at, Ellie? My lips parted, but nothing came out. My throat had gone completely dry. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, the scent of his cologne mixed with something clean and electric, like rain on concrete. My entire body tensed, frozen in place. I'm not playing, I whispered, voice trembling. I didn't know what else to say. What could I possibly say to explain 4 years of secret longing packed into one impulsive sentence? He scoffed and leaned in closer, one hand braced beside my head on the wall, the other casually slipping into his pocket like he wasn't cornering my entire existence. You've got guts now, huh? Just because you got into Caltech? Suddenly you think you can handle me? My hands clenched into fists by my side. That's not it, I muttered. Then what is it? His tone was sharp, almost mocking. You want my attention now? Want to see how far you can push before I snap? I swallowed hard. I don't want to push you. I wanted to talk to you. Properly. He let out a bitter laugh and pulled away a little, but not far enough. I could still feel his breath on my face. Talk? Ellie, we sat next to each other for 1 semester in high school. You never said a word to me. You acted like I didn't exist. My eyes widened. You remember that? Of course I remember, he snapped, and for the first time, I saw something raw flicker across his expression. I remember the yogurt. I remember how you blushed when I said dumb stuff. You acted like I didn't matter, then disappeared completely. And now you show up years later, talking about being naughty. I felt like someone had just punched the air out of my lungs. I had no idea he noticed any of that. I always thought I was invisible to him. My voice cracked when I said, I didn't ignore you on purpose. I just thought you'd never even notice me. His eyes locked onto mine. For a moment, the sarcasm in them faded, replaced with something deeper. That's the problem, he muttered. You think I wouldn't notice you. You think you're not worth being noticed. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned my face away, tears stinging my eyes. I'm sorry, I whispered. If I'm bothering you, I'll stop. Liam sighed like he was frustrated at everything, including himself. His hand slid down the wall and he stepped back, running his fingers through his hair. I don't even know what I'm doing, he muttered under his breath, then glanced at me again, quieter this time. I'm not mad because you came up to me. I'm mad because I don't get why you'd want to. I blinked at him, stunned. What? He looked like he hated the words even as he said them. I've seen girls pretend to be interested in robotics just to get close. I've seen them fake it all. But you don't fake things. You're awkward and honest and way too soft. That's dangerous. Dangerous. I echoed. For who? For me, he said simply, then turned away like the conversation was over. My knees gave out a little from the emotional whiplash, but before I could slide down the wall, he turned around again, caught me by the elbow, and steadied me with a sigh. Seriously? You're that fragile. I'm just nervous. I snapped without thinking. He stared at me. Then God help Mehe smiled. Not one of those lazy, bored smirks, but a real smile. Just for a second. So you can bite back, he said quietly. That's new. I flushed. I'm not fragile, I mumbled. I'm just not used to you yelling at me and then catching me in the same breath. His eyes dropped to my lips for a second before darting away. I wasn't yelling. That was just volume with emotion. Oh, that clears it up, I deadpanned. And for some reason, that made him laugh. He shook his head, let go of my arm, and stepped back. You confused the hell out of me. Good, I said, trying to sound brave even though my heart was still thumping like a marching band. You confuse me too. His expression softened again. You're really not gonna leave me alone, are you? I didn't mean to bother you, I started. You didn't, he cut in. I thought you didn't like me. So I kept my distance. Wait, you thought I didn't like you? I stared at him, incredulous. Liam, I repeated an entire year of high school to follow you here. He froze. What? I knew you were coming to Caltech. So I stayed behind, studied harder than I ever had in my life, and got in. Just so I could maybe have the courage to say hi. He looked absolutely stunned. You're insane, he said after a beat. You're completely insane. I know. You did all that for me? Yes. He stared at me like he didn't know what planet I was from. Then, very quietly, he said, that's the dumbest, most romantic thing I've ever heard. So can I add you on Messenger now? I asked, barely holding back a smile. Liam shook his head, walked toward the door, and said, no need. My stomach dropped. Oh, okay, I already sent you a request, he said over his shoulder. Check your phone. I fumbled for it, unlocked the screen, and there it was. Liam Carter has sent you a friend request. I didn't even think. I hit accept so fast I almost cracked the screen. A second later, a message popped up. It was a transfer. A 5-digit one. My jaw dropped. Before I could even react, another message followed. Use it as lunch money. Or buy snacks. Or a chair. You keep hanging around my lab like a ghost, might as well make you comfortable. I stared at the screen in disbelief, heart pounding. This was happening. He was letting me into his world. Slowly. Awkwardly. But definitely. And no matter how wild it was, I wasn't about to let go now. Not when I'd spent 4 years dreaming of this exact moment. The next day I stood outside the robotics lab with a lunchbox clutched nervously in both hands, my heartbeat racing like I was delivering a love confession instead of food, though to be fair, maybe it was both, I wasn't even sure anymore. I'd spent the entire night replaying every second of what had happened with Liam, from the moment he pulled me out of the party room to the second I hit, except on that friend request, and even now, hours later. I still couldn't get over the fact that Liam Carter Caltech's golden boy remembered me, added me, and sent me money with a note that sounded casual but screamed something else entirely, and now here I was, outside the lab. Fingers trembling slightly as I debated whether I should go in or turn around and pretend this lunch idea never existed, because what if he wasn't hungry, or worse, what if he found me clingy, what if I was already being too much? But just as I was in the middle of spiraling, a familiar deep voice came from behind me low. and amused. Are you gonna stand there all day? And I almost jumped out of my skin, spinning around to see Liam standing way too close. Tall and effortless, and somehow still looking like he walked out of a movie poster, even though his hair was a little messy and his sleeves were half-rolled. And before I could even answer, my foot twisted awkwardly and I stumbled, letting out a tiny yelp, but he caught me. One hand steadying my elbow like it was the most natural thing in the world. Easy, he said, eyes scanning my face with a touch of concern under all that usual indifference. You okay? And I nodded, heat crawling up my neck as I shoved the lunchbox behind my back like an idiot, pretending it didn't exist, except it obviously did. And he clearly noticed because he tilted his head and said, "Is that for me?" And my ears went full red. "Too heard you skip meals when you're working," so I thought maybe I trailed off, wanting to crawl into a hole as I slowly brought the box back around and held it out, praying he'd take it before my heart gave out. And he didn't say anything at first, just looked at it like it was a bomb, then slowly took it from my hands, and I swore his fingers brushed mine a little longer than necessary. "You didn't have to do this," he said, but his voice had softened, and he wasn't giving it back either, which was already a win in my book. But then a guy from the lab, one of his teammates, stepped out, spotted us, and smirked. "Oh hey, it's the lunch girl," and I stiffened immediately, clutching the strap of my bag, but Liam's eyes narrowed. "Don't start," he warned, but the guy just laughed and said, "Relax, I was just gonna say that our guy here doesn't eat cafeteria food, you know that, right? He's got a chef, 5-star stuff only," and suddenly I wanted to melt into the sidewalk because wow, of course he had a chef. What was I even thinking? Offering him my homemade lunch like I was on some K-drama mission. So I quickly said, "It's okay. You don't have to eat it. Really? I'll just..." But before I could grab it back, Liam held it out of reach and said flatly, "I'm eating it," and we both blinked at him, the other guy stunned into silence, while Liam added without looking at anyone, "Don't listen to him. I like homemade better anyway." And then he turned to me, gently tugged me by the sleeve, and muttered, "Come inside." So I followed him, still dazed, as he found a spot on the bench and opened the box like it was sacred treasure. His expression unreadable as he picked up the fork and took a bite, then another, eating with this strange intensity like he was focusing on not reacting, until finally he looked up and said, "This is good," and I almost collapsed in relief. But then he added, "But next time, less onions," and I stared at him. "Next time?" And he smirked, "Well, yeah, you already started. You can't just stop now," and something fluttered hard in my chest as I smiled. "Okay, deal." And as he ate, he paused every few minutes to ask little questions, like whether I always cooked for myself, what music I listened to, what my major was, and I answered everything, feeling like the luckiest girl alive until the teammate who teased us earlier passed by again and muttered just loud enough, "You've changed, man," and Liam, without even blinking, kicked him lightly in the back, sending him stumbling with a yelp while I gasped, "Oh my God, Liam." But he just rolled his eyes. "He's fine, drama queen." And the guy gave me a thumbs up from the floor like he was used to it. "Worth it," he whispered before limping off, and I stood there, frozen, holding the now empty lunchbox, until Liam calmly picked it up and said, "I'll wash this for you." And before I could stop him, he was gone, just like that, casually walking off like he hadn't just rearranged the axis of my world. And when he came back, he handed it over, put my slipping bag strap back on my shoulder, and said, "You should go. You've got class soon, right?" And when I nodded, he hesitated for a second, then asked, almost too casually, "Will you come tomorrow?" And I looked at him, heart full, because in his dark eyes there was a flicker of something vulnerable, like maybe he didn't know how to ask me to stay without sounding like he cared too much, and I said, "Only if you want me to," and he scoffed, "It's just for the food," but his ears turned a little red and that told me everything I needed to know. "Then I'll come every day," I said, smiling. And as I turned to leave, I heard him mumble behind me, "Keep your word," and I did. For the next week, I showed up like clockwork, always with a new lunch, always with a stupid grin I tried to hide, and every day, the pink chair appeared at his workstation, a small snack waited for me, sometimes a little note written on a napkin like, "Don't burn your tongue," or "You forgot your pen yesterday," and I kept them all tucked into my notebook like they were love letters, even if he'd never admit that's what they were. And every time I got too quiet or zoned out, he'd flick my forehead and say, "Eat, Ellie, before I feed you myself." And it was those little things, the forehead flicks, the shoulder strap fixing, the way he'd pull me aside if I looked upset and say nothing but just stand there until I calmed down, that slowly chipped away at my fear, and I started to think maybe this wasn't one-sided anymore. Maybe Liam Carter untouchable, cold, brilliant Liam was actually warming up to me. Maybe he even liked me back, and I wanted to believe it so badly, but I was still scared. Scared to break the fragile rhythm we had going. Scared that if I asked for more, he'd pull away. Scared that he was just being nice, and I was misreading everything, because girls like me didn't end up with boys like him. Not in real life. Not without a catch, and one afternoon when I showed up a little later than usual, I walked toward the studio just in time to hear voices inside. Loud and unfiltered. "She's just some freshman. Why does he let her hang around?" One girl said. "Did you see how he defends her?" "That's not like him," another replied. "Please, it's just pity. She's clearly obsessed, and he's just being polite." A guy chimed in. He said himself he hates clingy girls, especially the good girl types, and I felt like the world tilted under my feet. My stomach twisted into knots. I hadn't realized how deep I'd gotten until I heard those words out loud, and I backed away slowly, my legs numb, heart hollow, because what if they were right? What if I'd mistaken his kindness for something more? And that night, I stared at my phone for hours before finally opening our chat and typing, "I'm sorry if I've been a burden. I won't come to your studio again," and hit send, turned off notifications, threw my phone under my pillow, and cried until my head hurt, because chasing someone you love is brave, yes, but knowing when to let go? That takes everything you have. ChatGPT to NOI. It had been 3 days since I sent that message and turned off notifications. 3 days since I stopped showing up at the robotics lab with my lunchboxes and hopeful eyes. 3 days of pretending to be okay while my world quietly fell apart. And it was ridiculous, honestly, how empty my days suddenly felt without those stolen lunchtime moments, without the flick of his fingers on my forehead or the way he'd casually lean close and pretend not to care when he obviously did, but I couldn't stop replaying the voices I'd overheard in the lab. Those cold, snide comments about me being clingy and unwanted, a good girl in the worst way, and what broke me wasn't even the words themselves, it was the possibility that they were right. That maybe Liam was just too polite, too guilt-ridden to push me away, and I couldn't live with the thought that I was forcing myself into his world where I didn't belong, so I stayed away, dragging myself through each class, each meal, each moment like I was underwater, until the 4th night, when I came back from a late study session and saw him, standing outside my dorm building, tall and wet and completely out of place, holding a small cake box under his jacket like it was something precious, and I froze, breath catching in my throat, because Liam Carter was standing in the drizzle waiting for me like he wasn't the busiest guy on campus, like he didn't have labs and deadlines and more important things to do, and the second he saw me, he walked over without hesitation, eyes sharp but tired, like he hadn't slept, like he'd been thinking too much. "Why," he said, voice raw, "why did you block me?" And I panicked, looking around, hoping no one was watching, but of course people were. He was too noticeable, too tall and pretty and wet and Liam, and I whispered, "I didn't block you," which was a lie, and he called me out instantly. "You didn't answer any of my messages, ignored my calls. Even Maddie lied and said you weren't home." I flinched at the memory, remembering how I'd curled under the blanket while Maddie nervously lied for me, and I mumbled, "I'm sorry. I didn't want to bother you." His eyes narrowed, and he stepped closer, holding the cake box between us like it was a peace offering. "Bother me?" he echoed. "Ellie, I've been losing my mind trying to figure out what I did wrong." I shook my head frantically. No, you didn't do anything wrong." "I did. I got too close. I overstepped. I just thought maybe you were being nice to me out of pity." The look he gave me then wasn't angry, it was hurt, deep and real and bleeding. "Pity?" he whispered, and it felt like the words stabbed him. "You think I let someone touch my desk? sit in my chair, eat my food. Because I pity them. I looked away, biting my lip hard enough to taste blood, and he sighed, running a hand through his damp hair, his voice cracking just a little. I missed you, okay? And my heart squeezed so hard it hurt, because I'd missed him too, every second of every hour. And now he was right here saying the words I didn't dare believe. I'm not okay, Ellie, he said quietly. I haven't been okay since you stopped showing up. He held out the cake, the same lychee flavor I loved, the one he always remembered. I brought you this. I didn't know if you'd talk to me again, but I needed to try. And that was it. The last thread of strength snapped. My eyes filled with tears and my hands shook as I reached for the box. I'm not okay either, I whispered. I missed you so much. He stepped closer, lifted a hand, and gently tucked my hair behind my ear, his fingers brushing my cheek. Then why run away? He asked, voice soft and wrecked. Why not just tell me? I let out a tiny sob, unable to hold it in anymore, and he reacted instantly, wiping my tears with his thumbs, his forehead pressed gently against mine. Don't cry, he murmured. Please don't cry. I didn't come here to make you cry. I laughed through the tears. Breath hitching, you always make me cry, even when you're being nice. And he exhaled a laugh too, low and broken. God, you're unbelievable, he said, pulling back just enough to look me in the eye. I came out here in the rain with a cake, looking like a rejected K-drama second lead, and you're still the one crying. I hit his shoulder weakly. You're dramatic, and you're a flight risk. He shot back. How am I supposed to trust you not to vanish again? I swallowed, looked down, and said quietly, I won't run anymore. Not if I know you want me here. He cupped my cheek, eyes burning into mine. I do. Ellie, I've always wanted you here, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was nod as the drizzle soaked into our clothes, and the cake stayed forgotten in his hand. Then I'm staying, I whispered. I came to this school for you, Liam, but I'm staying for me, because I want to be near you not as some pathetic girl with a crush, but as someone who actually matters. His mouth opened slightly, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing, and then he laughed, a breathless, stunned kind of sound. I don't deserve you, he muttered, and I reached for his wrist. That's not your call to make. And maybe that was the moment everything shifted, because he leaned down slowly, hesitantly, his forehead brushing mine again as his lips hovered just above mine, and then he pulled back with a groan. If I kiss you now, I'm not letting you go. And I smiled through the tears. Then don't. And that was it. He kissed me like he'd been holding back forever, like I was something fragile and fiery all at once, and I kissed him back with every ounce of love I'd been carrying for the past 4 years. And when we finally broke apart, breathless and shivering, he whispered, We're doing this, right? And I nodded, Yeah, we're really doing this. And he held my hand all the way back to the dorm, not caring who stared, not caring that we were both drenched and ridiculous and obviously in love. And later that night, as I dried my hair and stared at the cake he gave me, I opened my phone and saw a new message. Baby, what are you doing? Followed by another, Baby, I can't sleep. Can we call? And then another, Baby, I bought you a pair of heels. Can you wear them for me? And I burst out laughing, cheeks burning, because the same Liam Carter who once iced me out in a party now couldn't go 5 minutes without texting me baby, like he hadn't spent years pretending not to know I existed. And somewhere between messages, I realized this wasn't a dream anymore. It was my life now, messy and real and terrifying and wonderful. And even if we had a long way to go, even if there were still misunderstandings to fix and people who wouldn't understand, we had something that felt like a beginning, not an ending, and maybe that was the best part of all. Liam wasn't what I expected him to be once we got together actually. Scratch that. He was exactly what I expected, and then something completely different layered underneath, like some kind of emotionally complex onion, because yeah, he was still cold to everyone else, still sharp-tongued and hard to read and capable of cutting someone down with one look, but with me, it was like he became this entirely different person, soft in ways I didn't think were possible for someone like him. Sending me good morning texts with terrible emojis, buying me limited edition snacks just because I'd once mentioned I liked a flavor, showing up outside my class with an umbrella when it rained even though he never remembered to carry one for himself, and he was clingy. Oh my god, so clingy. Like the man who once avoided me at a party now couldn't survive a full lecture block without texting me, baby, I'm dying. Where are you? Come save me. And I'd have to pretend not to blush while reading it under the desk like a lovesick idiot. But beneath all the teasing and casual affection, I could feel something heavier lingering under his skin, like he was still holding back, like there was a part of the story he hadn't told me yet, and I didn't want to push. But I also couldn't ignore the tension that occasionally slipped into his eyes whenever I mentioned high school or the past or asked why he acted the way he did when we first reunited. So one night, when we were curled up on his couch in his ridiculously sleek apartment that looked like it belonged in a tech magazine, I finally asked, Liam, what really happened that year? And he went still. His hand paused in the middle of brushing through my hair, and for a second I thought he wouldn't answer. But then he exhaled slowly and said, you really don't remember, do you? And my brows furrowed, because what was I supposed to remember? I'd spent that entire year loving him from afar in silence, scared of even making eye contact, and he continued, voice low and a little bitter. The day before the college entrance exams, I was going to tell you, finally, that I liked you, that I was going to wait for you at Caltech, but then I overheard you on the staircase. I blinked, heart pounding. Overheard me? You were talking to a friend. Maybe venting, I don't know, he said, jaw clenched. You said I was way out of your league, that it would be stupid to chase me, because I'd never look at someone like you. I froze, the memory crashing back like a tidal wave. Standing at the stairs with my best friend after class, rambling in a self-deprecating spiral, not realizing anyone could hear, and I covered my mouth, horrified. Oh my god, you heard that. He nodded, his eyes dark. Yeah, and it felt like getting sucker punched, because I thought maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one crushing from a distance. I stared at him, hands trembling. You liked me back. Of course I did, he snapped, frustrated. Do you think I gave yogurt to just anyone? Do you think I talked to every girl who sat in front of me in class? I liked you so damn much it made me act like an idiot. He paused, voice lowering again, but after I heard you say that, I figured you didn't want anything to do with me, so I kept my mouth shut and left, and suddenly everything made sense. His distance, his coldness when we met again, the confusing push and pull, and I wanted to cry, because the whole time we were both standing in the same storm, reaching for each other, but missing by inches, all because of a stupid moment of teenage insecurity. Liam, I whispered, crawling into his lap and holding his face in both hands. I didn't mean it. I was scared. I thought you were too good for me, that if I ever confessed, it would ruin everything. It almost did, he muttered. I almost gave up, but you didn't, I said, kissing his forehead, then his nose, then his lips, soft and slow. You found me again. He kissed me back, arms wrapping tight around my waist, and whispered against my mouth, I'll never let you go again. And something about hearing that raw and unfiltered melted every last bit of fear inside me, and that night, something shifted between us again, deeper this time, like the silence that used to separate us had turned into something sacred. And when we finally made it to his bedroom, it wasn't rushed or messy or like the dramas that fast-forward through all the tension. It was careful and deliberate, fingers tracing familiar paths and lips learning new ones, his voice low and hoarse as he whispered my name like a prayer against my shoulder, and I wasn't scared anymore, not of how much I loved him, not of whether I belonged in his life, because this was real, this was ours. And the next morning when I woke up tangled in his sheets with his arm wrapped around me like a vice and his hair tickling my neck, I thought back to that girl who sat quietly in front of him all those years ago, hiding her feelings behind textbooks and silence. And I wanted to reach back through time and tell her, hold on, don't give up, because one day, he'll hold you like this and call you baby and ask if you want pancakes or waffles with that sleepy post-kiss smile. And the best part is, you'll get to stay. No more chasing, no more hiding, just love, loud and unapologetic. And maybe a little messy, but yours. ChatGPT to NOI. After everything that happened, I thought things would settle into this soft rhythm, like Liam and I would just naturally fall into being that kind of couple who didn't need grand declarations or dramatic moments anymore. But of course, that was me being delusional because Liam Carter didn't do soft rhythms, he did extremes, and dating him meant my life quickly turned into a strange combination of romantic fever dream and chaotic tech genius sitcom. One minute, he was sweetly tying my shoelaces in the library like I was some helpless baby deer. The next he was arguing with a vending machine because it ate my dollar and refused to give me the specific snack I'd casually mentioned craving the night before, and yes, he threatened to dismantle it in front of 3 confused freshmen who now probably think he has serious vending machine trauma. But it was also the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Like I'd hung the moon and the stars and everything in between. Or how he'd randomly text me in the middle of the night just to say he missed me, even though we'd spent the whole day together, and I'd reply something like, "You're clingier than my favorite hoodie," and he'd answer, "Good, then wear me." Which was so stupid and so him it made me blush for hours, but beneath the teasing and clinginess, there was still this quiet part of Liam that didn't quite know how to be loved. Like, every time I kissed his cheek or held his hand in public, he looked a little startled, like he wasn't used to someone choosing him in the daylight, and that realization broke my heart a little, so I started making it a point to love him loudly, even when it was inconvenient or embarrassing, especially then. I brought lunch even when he said he was too busy. I waited outside his lab even when it rained. I made him sit through rom-coms even though he pretended to hate them, and when he grumbled through the opening scene and ended up fully invested 20 minutes later, I'd just smile and say nothing, and he knew, he always knew, he was slowly learning to stop resisting and start accepting, to let his guard down brick by brick, to stop seeing love as something earned through excellence and start understanding it could just exist, freely, between 2 people who simply wanted to show up for each other again and again, and it was beautiful watching that shift happen in him, like when he started saving photos of me without me noticing, or when I caught him doodling my name in the margins of his notebook like a lovesick teenage boy, and even though he pretended it wasn't a big deal, his ears turned red for an hour, and I swear he wouldn't meet my eyes for the rest of the day. And then came the day everything kind of snapped into place. Finals were approaching. The lab was a war zone. Everyone was stressed and on edge, and Liam was pulling crazy hours, so I brought him dinner and sat quietly while he worked, didn't talk, didn't distract, just existed beside him, and when he finally looked up, exhausted and a little hollow-eyed, he saw the food I brought and the little post-it note with a dumb smiley face I'd stuck on it, and something in him cracked because he just got up, walked over, and wrapped me in the tightest hug, burying his face in my neck like he needed to ground himself. "I'm scared," he whispered, and I blinked, not expecting that of what I asked gently, and his voice came out raw. "Of losing this US, I've never had anything this good before," and I pulled back, cupped his face, and said, "Then don't let yourself lose it," and he nodded like he was trying to commit those words to memory. Like maybe love wasn't just a feeling but a decision too, one you had to keep making even when you were tired or afraid, and I realized right then that we were both growing into this love, both learning how to carry it without dropping the fragile parts, and that was the magic, not perfection, but effort, over and over again, and maybe that's why it hit so hard when his mom showed up unexpectedly on campus a week later, all polished pearls and pristine judgment, walking into the studio like she owned the building, and I knew from the way Liam tensed beside me that this wasn't going to go well. "Liam," she said, her voice clipped, "we need to talk," and I tried to step back, but he held onto my hand tight, like he wasn't letting me go just to make her more comfortable. "This is Ellie," he said simply, and the look on her face was the kind of disapproval that didn't need words, like she'd already written me off as some meaningless distraction. But Liam didn't flinch, didn't retreat. He stood taller, squeezed my hand, and said, "She's important to me," and that was that. Later he admitted that he'd never introduced anyone to his mom before, never felt the need to defend his choices until now, and I could see how much it cost him to stand his ground, but he did it anyway, for me, for us, and in that moment, I didn't care if she liked me or not, because Liam did, and he wasn't hiding it, not anymore. And that night, when we were tangled up in his bed, soft music playing from his phone and the scent of lavender lingering in the sheets, he kissed me like he had something to prove, like he was claiming every second he thought he'd missed, and in the afterglow, with my head resting on his chest and his fingers lazily tracing shapes along my spine, he said, "You were worth the wait." And I almost cried because 4 years ago I never would have believed it, but here we were, and the next morning, he made pancakes with too much syrup, burned one, swore loudly, then insisted we eat it anyway because memories, and when I laughed until my stomach hurt, he said, "God, I love your laugh," like it was the easiest truth he'd ever spoken, and I realized that love wasn't always this fireworks and flames kind of thing. Sometimes it was quiet mornings and soft smiles and knowing you were exactly where you were meant to be, and I was home, in his arms, in this life we were building together, day by day. So when he pulled me into his lap and whispered, "Marry me someday," I didn't even hesitate. I said, yes, because of course I would, always.